What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the MLB First Look podcast, presented as always by RunPureSports.com. I'm your host, as usual, DraftCheat, flying solo today, talking Wednesday's 9-game main MLB slate. We do have a pretty tasty early slate. I think 5 games starting at noon Eastern time, I believe. So 5-game early DraftKings slate at least. Should be a good one over there. So we'll have content you need. I'm on the early playbook. So I'll have the plays ranked for you guys over at runpuresports.com for premium members. If you want to sign up for that and everything else we've got over at RPS, use promo code RPSHeater25 for 25% off your first payment. All right, let's get into these games. We'll go game by game through this 9-game slate. Talk about all the pitching stacks, all that good stuff as we go along. Starting with the first game of the night, we'll go by the DraftKings order of games. They've got first game of the night listed as Toronto and Baltimore. Hyun-Jin Ryu on the mound for Toronto against Matt Harvey for the Baltimore Orioles. We saw yesterday the Toronto Blue Jays disappoint a little bit against who's the pitcher? Spencer Watkins, I think, if I recall his name correctly. Honestly, I hadn't even heard of him until yesterday. Vlad ultimately did get a home run late in the game, but overall they were somewhat of a disappointing stack to go with. We'll see if that happens again tonight. It's going to be 90 degrees again in Baltimore, wind blowing out, and I would presume that Toronto bounces back here against Matt Harvey, who obviously isn't very good. He is a little more effective against right-handed hitters, but still, you got to go with the Blue Jays bats if you can afford them in your lineup. I think they are certainly a premium stack. Pitching in this game, of course, you're not going to use Harvey, or at least I would recommend against it. Hyun-Jin Ryu is kind of interesting. He's really not been very good this year, especially recently. Been struggling, even against Baltimore a couple starts ago, only 11 fantasy points there, negative in his last outing against Seattle. So I don't know. I'm not really sure what's going on with Ryu. I kind of thought he would, start turning it up more recently, and it hasn't happened. I mean, the strikeouts in his last 5 games, 2, 3, 4, 3, 3. Swinging strike rate hasn't been there. So Ryu a pass for me at 8,300 until further notice. I need to see something from him at this point. Metrics don't look great, and certainly the results haven't been there either. So no hitters in this game for me, or no pitchers rather. No, yes, give me the hitters, especially the Toronto side, and I don't mind some of those Baltimore righties: Mountcastle, Austin Hayes, Trey Mancini. Kind of the top of the order there for Baltimore. We know they can do some damage. They did some last night, in fact, against Toronto. So, yeah, a hitting game here in Camden Yards. That's pretty typical, obviously, for Orioles games, especially when it's warm like it is in Camden tonight. Next game on the slate is the Dodgers and the Miami Marlins. Looks like kind of a bullpen game here for the Dodgers. I think they're going to start. DraftKings has Phil Bickford listed as the starter. He hasn't gone more than an inning in couple weeks here. So maybe you would get 2 innings out of him, I think at most, although he did just pitch 2 days ago. So I don't know, probably just 1 inning actually from Bickford. But regardless, I don't think you're going to play him at 4,500. They do have David Price listed as the long reliever, the bulk reliever, but he also pitched just back on July 4th. It's July 7th today, so just 2 days rest. He went 2 innings and 42 pitches in that one. They are talking about stretching him out. Obviously, the Dodgers have had a number of injuries to their pitching staff, and now the return of Trevor Bauer due to the sexual assault allegations, I guess you could call them. He's questionable when he's going to come back. I don't think the organization or baseball maybe even knows. So I think they're going to stretch out David Price to be a starter. I just don't know how much further they can stretch him out in this outing because he did just pitch back on July 4th, as I mentioned. So maybe 3 innings from Price here at 5,500 against Miami on a tough pitching slate. I guess you could maybe make the case for it. I doubt I'll end up there. Price has looked okay this season. I do think he'll pitch decently well here, but just not going to give you the length, I think, to have quite the upside. Even though you don't need a lot of upside at 5,500, I still want a little bit more than Price is offering. And that's if everything goes right? If he has a rough outing, he maybe won't even make it through an inning. You just don't know, because I don't think he can go. I would assume a max here of 55 to 60 pitches. And I don't even think he'll get that high, but that's just, I would assume, kind of an absolute max for him. So yeah, pass on the pitchers here. Yeah, David Hess, I guess, is listed as the starter for the Marlins. Again, he's just pitched one inning, just two outings this season so far at the big league level. Just went one inning in each of them. That was back on July 5th and 6th, so just the last 2 days. So yeah, I don't know actually if he's gonna pitch at all, if he's pitched the last 2 days. So that starter is probably wrong. So I guess we don't know for sure who's gonna pitch for Miami. So I guess we could revisit that, but tough matchup anyway against the Dodgers, and I don't think Miami's going to bring some stud up that we don't know about. So no pitchers here. I think the hitters are a little bit interesting, especially on the Dodgers side, depending on who Miami rolls out there. So we'll have to figure that out throughout the day. It's unclear at this point, early on Wednesday morning, who it might be. But regardless, tough hitters park. Probably a game mostly passing on. I don't love targeting bullpen games in general, but the Dodgers side of it, at least, I think is going to be a little bit interesting. Next on the slate is Milwaukee and the New York Mets. Again, a pretty bad spot for pitchers. Brett Anderson, who I pretty much never roster. This will be a 7-inning game, by the way. I'm fairly certain. Yeah, I think a doubleheader from the postponement last night, which, by the way, thanks, Mets. I had Jacob deGrom in most of my lineups. Had some pretty good lineups otherwise, but the 0 from deGrom stung a little bit, along with 40% of the field took that too, but still hurt. Anyway, Anderson here, 6,200 going up against the Mets. He's been negative in three of his last 4. Did somehow have a 32-point DraftKings point outing. Sandwiched in between there, but I think I talked about before his last start. I did not expect that to continue, and it certainly didn't. He's a pitcher you want to stack against. Problem is, 7-inning game, kind of hard to do so, especially with the Mets at home. If they have a strong showing offensively, you might only get 6 innings of at bats from them, because they're not going to bat in the bottom of the 7th. So again, another game where I'm probably mostly going to stay away. Mets have Robert Stock listed as the starter, and then I assume Jacob deGrom will start in the nightcap in the second the second game of the doubleheader if DK has it right. I'm again not 100% sure on that, but you're not going to want to play Robert Stock, and you're probably not going to want to play Milwaukee hitters either, given the 2 innings lopped off from the back end of the game. So pretty much pass for me here. If I was going to go anywhere in the Milwaukee-New York Mets first game, it would be with Mets hitters against Brett Anderson, but you just kind of limit your upside a little bit if you go in that direction. Philadelphia and the Chicago Cubs next. We've seen Philadelphia explode offensively 2 slates in a row. We were on it both games with the wind blowing out in Wrigley, and good matchups both games for the Philadelphia Phillies. That's going to change a little bit today. The weather has shifted in Chicago. The heat has broken, and it'll be not prime hitting environments, frankly, in Chicago tonight. So you'll see a much lower total. I'm trying to look that up right now. It doesn't look like it's listed, but yeah, in terms of the weather, we're looking at 70 degrees with wind blowing in. We were looking the last couple days pretty much 90 degrees and 10-mile-per-hour winds out. It makes a huge difference, as you guys probably know by now, in Wrigley Field, especially which way the wind is blowing. And so, yeah, that'll take kind of a lot of the bats off the slate for me. Could still go to the Phillies against Alec Mills. Just not a very good pitcher. It would be the lefties that I would primarily target, but probably not going there. Mills is coming off a very strong start against the Cincinnati Reds. 5 2/3 innings, 9 strikeouts, and 92 pitches. So 7,400 in good pitching conditions. I'll have to dig a little bit into Mills. He hasn't made that many starts. He's kind of been a bulk relief guy, I think, for much of the season for the Cubs. So that's going to be one I'll have to dig into. I am on the free YouTube show today. That's at 4:30 Eastern time with Hoop and Title. So check that out for final thoughts on Mills. Possibly a play here at that price point, especially with the wind. Good for pitching in Wrigley. Opposite him is Zach Wheeler, who has been a monster this season. And no foreign substance crackdown seems to be slowing him down. Last couple of starts, 9 strikeouts, 8 strikeouts, just 2 walks. Combined in those 2 starts went 7 and 7 2/3 innings, over 30 DraftKings points in both outings. Dude's a monster. Goes deep into games, 114, 103 pitches. He doesn't appear to be slowing down. And, the Cubs strike out a ton against right-handed pitching. I think they're first or second in the league over the last month or so against right-handed pitching in terms of strikeout percentage. So Wheeler on this slate is the number one guy with a bullet for me. He's going to be a priority play. He's going to be very popular, yes, but I think worth it. Not at an exorbitant price tag either, $10.3K on DraftKings. On FanDuel is a little more expensive, $11.2, but in my opinion, still worth it. Possible rain issues in this game. I think unlikely that it'll cause any real issues, but something to pay attention to, especially after me and I assume some of you guys lost to DeGrom last night. So could be a similar situation here. Hopefully not. Hopefully you get some clarity before lock on the weather in Chicago. But possible pitcher stack here. Definitely going with a lot of Zach Wheeler in my lineups. Next on this slate is Oakland and Houston. 2 pretty good pitchers here. Sean Manaea, the lefty on the hill for Oakland. He's pitched well this season. I don't know if I necessarily want to use him against Houston. He has faced them 3 times so far this season already, which is a little bit scary. Hasn't pitched particularly well. Has made it 16 and 2/3 total innings, 9 earned runs, 11 strikeouts, 8.6 fantasy points per game in those games. Just a tough matchup for him. Houston doesn't chase anything, as you guys know. Yordan Alvarez with a monster game last night, a couple home runs after coming back from the paternity list. He's got that new dad swag going on. Don't necessarily love him left versus Manaea, but just a brutal matchup overall for Manaea. I don't necessarily love Houston bats either. Kind of a stay away on both sides. If I was going to Houston, I think it would be a full stack, hopefully, and kind of banking or hoping that Manaea doesn't have his good stuff. But yeah, overall, don't love either side of that one. I do like Luis Garcia quite a bit here, coming off a little bit of a disappointing outing against Baltimore and, a little bit of a disappointing, frankly, against Detroit the start before that too. So a couple somewhat shaky outings. They weren't terrible, 5 strikeouts in each of them, 4 earned runs, 2 earned runs. But yeah, he's been fantastic throughout the season. 9,600 is a lot, but I do like that he is 1 at home, and 2, the A's a dangerous offense, but still advantage Luis Garcia here. So there is limited options for pitching on this 9-game slate. I think Garcia clearly a step or maybe 2 steps behind Zach Wheeler, but still one of the top options so far. We're on the 5th game of 9 and really haven't seen a lot that interests us so far. So yeah, Luis Garcia certainly makes the short list. Manaea, not so much. I do think the Astros probably take this game, but yeah, Luis Garcia, depending on how much value emerges from hitting and if we like any of these pitchers in the next 4 games, Luis Garcia got to be in consideration at least. Next game is Colorado and Arizona in the desert. Again, a game where I'm not really going to want to use the pitchers here. Antonio Senzatella has made some improvements this year. In Arizona, as we know, not a very good offense, but they are very left-handed heavy, which worries me a little bit for Senzatella. But still, at 6,600, I think you could do worse than Senzatella. You're probably going to get 90 to 100 pitches out of him. He's been going pretty deep into games. Last 5, in terms of innings pitched, 7, 5, 6, 6, 6. So, and it's in 7 2/3 the start before that, and that's with half of those games in Coors Field. So he's been getting the job done. He's just not a high strikeout guy. But, maybe someone I'll have to dig into a little bit more because, again, pitching is limited on this slate. And if you can get, 15 DraftKings points out of a $6,600 Senzatella, you're probably pretty happy with it, to be honest. I don't think outside of Wheeler we're really going to see any monster scores from pitchers. So that means you kind of got to survive it, hopefully at a lower price point, and perhaps Senzatella can get the job done. So I'll be digging into him throughout the day here, and I'll have kind of a final call on the show and in Coors, obviously, as well. So that's Senzatella. Opposite him, is it Hector? I think it's Hector Castellanos for the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's 4K. He's another kind of relief guy. You're hoping for 3 innings out of him. He's pitched okay. He really hasn't been terrible. And he did last pitch on July 3rd, so he's had 3 full days of rest. So maybe you can get 2 or 3 innings out of him. I would guess 2. Probably 40 to 50 pitches, it looks like, kind of looking at the game log. 4K, I mean, it's Colorado, so I guess you could go here if there's a stack that you really want, right? If you want the Blue Jays, you want Wheeler, maybe you need to use the 4K pitcher. I don't think it's the worst idea in the world, but yeah, we'll need hopefully maybe get some clarification on just how long they're hoping Castellanos can go in this game. So another one I'll be digging into throughout the day, but at least a little bit interesting, both these guys, Senzatella and Castellanos. I don't really use Colorado much on the road, and I think that will be the case here most likely, except, Arizona's got a pretty terrible bullpen and pitching staff in general. So I'll dig into that bullpen for Arizona as well, see who might be coming in. And I think this could be a situation where maybe you go full stack Colorado if you want to use them. Hopefully, hope they get into that bullpen early and do some damage. So an interesting game here, I think. A number of different ways you can go. And I don't have, I guess I don't have final answers for you, but hey, I don't have to. It's 9:30 in the morning Eastern time, and the slate doesn't start for, 10 hours or something like that. So we'll see. I'll have more information on both these pitchers and possible stacking opportunities on the live free YouTube show and in Discord and all that stuff. A couple more games to talk about. 3 more games, actually. St. Louis and San Francisco. A good pitching option here, in my opinion. Alex Wood, 8,500 on DraftKings against the St. Louis Cardinals. I was on Cueto yesterday. He was okay. I think he got 8 or 9 strikeouts, if I recall correctly, off the top of my head. I did get hit around a little bit, though, so the fantasy results were not super great, not terrible for 7,700. But yeah, Wood, he went through a rough patch a couple starts ago, but he's rebounded nicely, and he is a guy I can expect to continue to pitch well. Last 2 starts, 8 strikeouts in each of them, 92 and 98 pitches. So he is a guy that, at least in theory, should give you length. He only made it 5 and 5 1/3, but, he's a strike thrower. He's a guy that can miss some bats, a lot of ground balls, and he pitches in a nice pitcher's park, right, in San Francisco. So he's got a lot going for him. I'm not scared of this St. Louis offense, even though it is very right-handed heavy, which is not totally ideal for Wood, but at 8,500, I would probably right now put him as my SP2, I think, behind Zach Wheeler, of course, and then I think ahead of Luis Garcia. Opposite Wood is Johan Oviedo, who has shown some talent. Young pitcher. He's got a good arm, kind of up and down, right, like you expect from a lot of young pitchers, but been good enough at least to hold a rotation spot for now. 6,400. I don't think the worst play against San Francisco, but the Giants aren't really a team I love targeting anyway. Got a lot of lefties in that lineup, which can present problems for Oviedo. So probably a pass on Oviedo, but someone, again, that I will dig into a little bit just to make sure there's not more there than I think. And yeah, Brandon Crawford, my guy, I recommend him almost every slate. They're up against a right-handed pitcher. That won't change. I think he had 3 hits and a warning track fly ball yesterday. So he's seeing the ball very well right now, and certainly like that matchup for him against Oviedo and a really, really bad Cardinals bullpen. So possibly San Francisco as a kind of a sneaky late night stack could be in play. Next game is the Washington Nationals and San Diego Padres, 2 kind of big name pitchers here. Chris Paddock takes the bump for San Diego, and Patrick Corbin on the hill for the Washington Nationals. You never know what you're going to get from Corbin. He's had a lot of negative starts, including his last time out against the Dodgers, where he gave up 6 runs. Before that, though, had some pretty strong games, 6, 7 strikeout games against the Marlins, Mets, and Pittsburgh. Of course, those are all pretty good matchups. Get San Diego here, not a good matchup. A lot of right-handed power, so I'll be in on some of these San Diego bats. Obviously, Tatis leads the way, but Machado, Will Myers, Tommy Pham, the list goes on for the Padres. I think they'll be a fun late-night stack that people won't be on. And stacking against Corbin's been in general, a profitable strategy this year. Not always, but he's got blown up a number of times, and this could be one of those for Patrick Corbin. So give me the San Diego bat side in that matchup. Chris Paddock, another guy that's kind of tough to figure out. Looked like he had it going on. If you go back 3 starts, he had a nice run there of 5 or 6 starts in a row where he was dealing. Then it all fell apart for him against the Diamondbacks of all teams. 5 earned runs over 2 1/3 innings. And he wasn't super great against Philadelphia either. Much better. He did make it 7 innings, 3 earned runs, 5 strikeouts. So a solid start there, went 95 pitches. I think he's in play. The Nationals lineup has taken a big hit with the loss of Kyle Schwarber, and it's really not a very deep lineup, right? You get past Trey Turner, you get past Juan Soto, and Soto even himself hasn't been swinging the bat quite the same this season. You can kind of shut down this lineup. So Paddock, another pitcher that I think is at least in play at 8,700. I wouldn't mind, though, using a guy like Soto or Josh Bell against him either. So I think you can play either side of that one. But, yeah, Paddock, that's be, 3 or 4 on the slate? 4, I would say 4 or 5. I think I would put him probably behind Luis Garcia. But, Wheeler, Alex Wood, Luis Garcia, and then maybe Chris Paddock would be 4th just in terms of raw point projection. Last game of the night, 2 more, I think, interesting pitching options. New York and Seattle out on the West Coast. Yusei Kikuchi pitching for the Mariners. He's been quite good all season long. I like that he's at home here. And listen, there are obviously some dangerous hitters in that Yankees lineup, right? Stanton and Judge, they went off yesterday. Kind of no surprise. But Kikuchi's a much different beast than his teammate Justice Sheffield. So a dangerous one here. Like, he could give up home runs for sure. But I could see him dealing at home here in Seattle against the Yankees and getting some strikeouts. And, good pitchers have success against the Yankees. The Yankees are kind of beat up on the bad guys. So, yeah, I think Kikuchi, 9,300, another guy that we've got to add into that mix at SP2 for sure. And his mound opponent, Domingo Germán, been a rough run for him. Hasn't had a start over 10 fantasy points in any of his last 4. And we did have some pretty tough outings. The Angels at Fenway, the Oakland A's, and then at Philadelphia. That one shouldn't have been tough, but he gave up 7 earned runs. Under the hood, though, Domingo Germán looks pretty good to me. I think he will turn it around sooner rather than later. Still getting whiffs, still throwing strikes for the most part. So against Seattle, I kind of like him a little bit at 7,700. I think people might look at the game log and say, no way to Domingo Germán, but I would trust, I'd trust the underlying metrics, and I would trust Vegas here. They do have the Yankees as a favorite. Seattle with one of the lower team totals on the slate at 4.1. So, yeah, Domingo Germán, another pitcher that is certainly in play. Hitters in this game, listen, if you want to go for some of that right-handed power against Kikuchi, I can't hate it. I think I would prefer those guys as one-offs. I don't think I want to stack against Kikuchi. I just don't think he's going to get blown up, but he could easily give up a home run or 2. So if you want to grab a Stanton, a Judge, a Sanchez, a Voit, an Urshela, I think that's a totally reasonable thing to do. And then on the Mariners side, it would be the lefty power. I don't have that much of it. 2 guys that stick out to me, Kyle Seager, always a home run threat from the left side. And then Jake Fraley, who's been swinging a really good bat recently, I think is a reasonable play as well if you want to pick out 1 or 2 bats against Domingo Germán. All right, that'll do it for this slate. Short and sweet today. Back tomorrow with Steve Boynton, I believe. Always fun to do podcasts with him. We'll be talking Thursday's main slate. And, thanks for listening. We'll have all the content you need up over at Run for Your Sports. Promo code RPS Heater 25 for 25% off your first payment if you want to get in the premium content and Discord and all that. All right. Thanks for listening. And until next time, I'm DraftCheat, and we're out of here.